everyone, welcome back to the Thought Bubble podcast. This is Laura. I'm excited to be back. It's been a little sporadic and crazy, but we'll get to it. You know, new year, new me. I'll stay on top of it and things will go well. So, in case this is your first time here, my name is Laura. I am a social work graduate student. I'll be graduating in May with my master's in social work with a concentration in advanced clinical practice, working with children, youth, and families. So basically, my interest is working with children, child welfare, working with people who have some type of trauma, typically victims of crime, potentially working in criminal justice and juvenile justice. So today on the podcast, we are going to dive into a discussion about, is social work for you? And is it, if it's not for you, we're going to talk about that too. We're just really going to dive into it because I do have a blog post written about this and I kind of wanted to dive a little deeper. Sometimes I'm not able to adequately articulate my feelings. And honestly, this topic can be a little bit controversial. I don't know, especially in social work. We need social workers. We need more social workers. Social workers need to be paid better, especially for the degrees that they're supposed to be receiving, you know? And so to me, it's a little bit frustrating because we need more workers, right? But to me, I'm in school and I'm seeing people who really just in their personality and the way they just interact with humans on a daily basis is not good. They kind of come off as rude and they don't have any empathy. They make fun of other people, and it's just wow, is social work really for you? Because at the core of social work, those people, they could do policy level work. They could do community social work, more macro meso level things. But the core of social work at any level is the capacity to understand the need of humans and to have compassion and have empathy and truly just have a heart for serving others and wanting to alleviate human suffering. And so to me, it's kind of why aren't there things in place other than a licensing exam that would kind of screen for those people where it's their personality just isn't fit for social work? And I think the conclusion I draw, or the comparison I draw a lot, tends to be with law enforcement, because they have to take a personality test or something like that in order to start working for law enforcement. Obviously it is not perfect because we continue to see bad cops who perpetrate, against young Black men and women and police brutality, all this stuff. So obviously the system is not perfect, but I'm sure it's done something, right? And I'm wondering why we don't have that for social work. And I speak on this because I remember in my undergraduate education when I was at a SUNY school, it was a wonderful school. I loved it so much. And it was a class of 50 in the social work program. And there was a really solid group of us, but there was always 2 or 3 students where everyone in class would kind of get uncomfortable when they started to speak. Everyone would kind of look at each other and be ooh, what she's saying is incredibly offensive and not strengths-based and not empathetic. Wow, she's going to be a social worker. And there was even an incident where a student broke HIPAA in the classroom. And of course, there are some settings where we talk about client cases and everything, but we never actually break HIPAA. She spoke on the person's name and the situation. It was horrific. And it was even to the point where professors were kind of making hints towards students like myself and my peers wow, geez, they're going to be in social work. That's crazy. And to me, what was crazy was that the professors, the head of the department, they saw these students and they were wow, they shouldn't be in social work. But then that's all they did. They didn't, I don't know, they had the capacity to not pass them. They had the capacity to at least like fail them in field, and things like that, where it's like, is there something we can do to prevent those people from entering the social work field, or will that naturally occur, So it's kind of this idea of, I don't know, maybe it's wrong to prevent those people from entering the field, right? If just their personality doesn't match, because then that could enter things into like, honestly, systematic racism and discrimination and oppression. Even though it's social work, those things are still incredibly present, right? In all systems, even if it is social work and education. Or I think of it in terms of, you know what? A lot of people have degrees that they never actually like work in, right? So maybe it's one of those things that will naturally work itself out. They'll enter the field, or, they won't pass an interview, or they'll burn out really fast, or they'll just pursue other work, or they won't pursue social work. But to me, it's still like, do we want to take that chance? Because, we all know those stories, those terrible stories in the news that really portray social workers terribly. Obviously the media never truly takes into account the role of social workers and really a lot of background information. But it's kind of like, there are social workers that are not good, that are truly terrible, that aren't just burned out, but they shouldn't have come into the field in the first place, right? Because I think there's a difference. There's a difference between social workers who burn out and social workers who should not have entered the field in the first place. Because even myself, at first, I had so much passion, right? And I'm still in grad school, and, I've been in social work for 5 years now. And it's kind of like, I thought I was invincible and that I couldn't get burned out. And to some extent, I still think that's true. But I also realized that I completely have the ability to become burned out, especially when my own mental health concerns are put on the back burner and I don't really give myself time to heal and time to recover emotionally and mentally. And so to me, I feel like, do we want to take that risk of allowing these people in the field when they could potentially in the future be those social workers in the news for, not doing their job that leads to a death, that leads to some kind of harm done? And it's just horrific to think about. Now, I have a personal example in my life that I'm going to speak on, because I know there's different levels to this, and I also know that I'm biased, right? So I have a cousin who is pursuing social work. Now, this story in itself is heavy for me, because I have like other things going on with this individual where I definitely feel like my judgment is clouded no matter what. And so I think it's also good for me to kind of speak on this and process it a little bit more. But I've even gotten feedback from other people where it's like, yeah, she should not be pursuing social work. And at this point in her life, what it looks like is she doesn't know what to do. So she just followed in my footsteps, right? She saw, people coming up to me and being like, wow, you're in social work, and oh wow, you're helping people. Wow, that's amazing. She didn't really know what she wanted to do with her life. College is not for her at all, and that's okay. Like, honestly, this agenda just in US culture about pushing higher education and college is ridiculous. So don't even get me started on that. But college is not for her. Her family structure kind of pressured her and pushed her into college when she shouldn't have gone, honestly. She should have gone to like a trade school or started just getting work experience, building herself up that way. Something like that. Academics, no. And so that was the first thing where it was like, oh wow, okay, this isn't going well. And then she got into social work, and she would talk to me about social work things and just not even grasp basic concepts like strengths-based approach, which is inherently in its name. and so to me, that was like, okay, you've been in social work school for like 3 years now. You're still not understanding what strengths-based approach means. Is social work for you? And I'm an incredibly diplomatic passive person, so I never actually say these things out loud. I mostly just vent to my family about them, like my mom, okay, or to myself on this podcast. So it was things like this. And really getting to the core characteristics of why she should not be in social work is she's not pursuing social work because it's meaningful to her. She's pursuing social work because she doesn't know what else to do with her life. And she sees someone else doing it. So she's like, that's working out for them. So I'll do it too. I'll jump on board. Social work is not for people who think, it's working out for them. I'll give it a go. That's not what social work is. In order to be successful, you in anything, not just in social work, you should pursue something that you're passionate about, right? For me personally, it's very hard for me to be successful in something that I don't have a lot of passion for, right? I sometimes get tunnel vision and I work ferociously hard towards my goals because I have so much passion for them. I started off my college career in nursing school because, I wanted to move to Africa. I wanted to work in a hospital that was affiliated with my church. And so I started off in nursing school because I also knew I wanted to help people, right? There was that core element there of just really having a heart for others and wanting to be a servant to others. And it was horrendous. I hated nursing school. It was terrible. I cried every single day. And I tried so hard to love it. I tried to convince myself, Laura, it's nursing school. Of course, nursing school is hard, right? But you can do this. You can get through this. You're intelligent. You just want to help people. This is just one of those hard stepping stones that'll get you to where you want to go in life, right? No, it was terrible. And eventually in the middle of the second semester, I just completely broke down and I got home because this was at community college. I was commuting and I was living from home with my family. And I got home one day from class and I just burst into tears for like the 100th time. And my mom was just like, what's going on? I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm changing my major. Like I can't do this. The next day, I withdrew from the nursing program and I changed my major to human services. And the next semester is when I started my classes in human services. And let me tell you, my first day of classes, I knew this is for me. This is it. This is all I've ever wanted. Human services, eventually, which would become my bachelor's of social work. I'm like, this is it. And it was literally from day one, that passion was fierce. And to me, that's how I knew. It kind of reminds me of when I watch Say Yes to the Dress and, the brides are trying on their dresses and they just get that feeling, that this is it. This is that feeling that this is your wedding dress. To me, social work was my wedding dress, right? It was the first day and it was my first classes ever in human services. Social work was never even an option to me. I'd never even heard of it. And it was just like, wow, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that is not seen in my family member. The other part of it that I think is also really important is, social work is not just about helping people. If you go into social work thinking, you want to help people, that's all fun and fresh. But is that also not filled with some type of arrogance and some type of you're better than someone, so you have the ability to help them? And so it's also thinking about that and being able to understand your positionality and how social work really isn't about helping people so much as it is about empowering people. And I think that's really where we want to make that change in language is, helping someone to me just inherently says, I am higher up. I am better than them. They are lower than me, and I have the ability to push them to where they need to go. And I'm sure that's certainly true in social work. Some people do need that push, and some people probably look at us like, we're the professionals. We have the education. We have the training. We have the ability to connect them to resources, to do all the stuff that will have a positive impact on their life. But we need to be careful and not get cocky and not get arrogant and not think that we're saviors, especially as a white social worker, getting familiar and understanding that white savior complex and how that impacts your professional life and work as a clinician and as a social worker. And that was just not there. That's not there in my family member, or really a lot of people that shouldn't be pursuing social work, is they just don't have an ability to, be empathetic towards anyone. And it's truly saddening, honestly. I don't want to bring politics into this, even though social work is so much, like, politically, social work is so prevalent as well. But it's just like what makes me so upset. And honestly, it just breaks my heart. I used to be angry about it. I used to be so like enraged and frustrated. And now it just makes me sad to the point where it's like, okay, you want this president or you want this legislation, you want this congressperson, but like, look at the impact. Like, look at the impact of this policy. Do you not have any compassion? Like, just from human to human, like just looking at human suffering and human need, like, where is the love? Where is the kindness? Just like the heart to heart of really like empathy. And it just shocks me sometimes. And it truly breaks my heart that so many people are so like fiercely for detrimental policies and just truly do not grasp the concept of like systematic racism or, historical oppression, or why people are in poverty or experience homelessness, or why people in domestic violence relationships stay. They just have no ability to understand another person's perspective, and it breaks my heart. Because it's just like, wow, there's so much suffering, and it's just like these people just have no capacity to even have compassion. It's crazy. If you're like that, which honestly, I don't think you would admit it to yourself, you shouldn't be in social work, right? Social work is not for you. Even if you're considering policy, no. Do not. I would suggest perhaps a profession where you don't interact with any human ever. And I know this sounds harsh, but it's like, come on, this is social work, this is social work. And so that kind of also goes into another topic of being able to address our own biases. I mentioned earlier understanding that white savior complex, because I am a white social worker, and understanding now more about my positionality and my privilege. I'm going to be a white social worker working in child welfare, the criminal justice system, juvenile justice, and I need to understand the disproportionate arrest and detention and, participants in the child welfare system are minorities, are people of color, Black and brown communities. And it's just like, I need to understand that. And not only understand that and understand my privilege, but I can't get cocky with my privilege, because there's a fine line between understanding your white privilege, accepting it, and using it to help for social justice purposes, right? To help a community, to do something greater than yourself, right? For that social justice, for equity, that kind of thing. And then it kind of crosses a line into that white savior complex. So essentially, as social workers, as white social workers, it's important to understand your privilege, and not just as white social workers, in all terms of lifestyle, your gender, your sexuality, gender identity, religion, class, everything. Take it all into account and understand how that impacts your life, and also how that impacts your client's life, the populations that you'll be working with. If you don't have the ability to understand the impact or of your privileges and also your non-privileges, then I don't know if social work is for you, right? Because that's such a huge part of it. Also because that systematic everything is so intertwined into so many systems, including social work. It is necessary to understand how our position in life has affected and perhaps even perpetuated systems of oppression. So if you are considering social work, and honestly, maybe you're new to this, I'm not saying if you don't understand your privilege and you don't understand your own biases as well, because we all have biases and that's okay. But if you don't understand your biases and actively work to keep them in check, I'm not saying social work isn't for you necessarily. I definitely think you need to continue to educate yourself. You need to do a lot of self-reflection and do a deep dive into understanding the historical context of social work and social justice, and how that impacts all the people that we will be working with, and also how you practice as a social worker. If you continue not to understand after you do some more research, after you hear different opinions, gain lots of knowledge, really just open up your mind. Or if you don't have the ability to open your mind to different opinions, I would suggest not pursuing social work. That does not seem like it would be a beneficial career for you if you do not have the ability to do that. Another part of social work that I think is really important to understand, and it kind of relates back to what I was talking about earlier, how social work is not just helping people. Social work is not just being nice to someone. It's not just talking to someone. It's not any of those things. If you believe social work practice is that, then you are contributing to the stereotypical, media-driven perception of social work. And that's not good. I think so many people just truly don't understand academically and just throughout society what social workers actually do, that we are incredibly trained, educated professionals that work within, psychology and sociology, criminology. We take so many things into account. We have a lot of information in our brains. We have a lot of skill, a lot of evidence-based, researched skill and techniques on how to work with people, on advocacy, on teaching, on behavior change, so many things. It's honestly insane because we kind of just have knowledge on a lot. The medical fields, like I said, psychology, law enforcement, just everything, immigration, so many social issues and fields like that we have an understanding of and often have deep knowledge of those concepts. And so to say that social work is helping someone or being nice to someone or talking to someone, no. If you don't have the ability to be nice to someone, obviously you should not be in social work. If you don't have the ability to talk to a person like they're a human being, you shouldn't be in social work. But social work is not just those things. We are incredibly skilled, highly educated professionals. I'm in graduate school getting my master's degree. This is my 5th year of school. I also have my bachelor's in social work and my associate's degree in human services. There are some social workers who have a bachelor's in something else, and that's perfectly fine. They go to grad school and get their master's in social work. But it's kind of no, we put in the work, we put in the money, we put in the time. We are incredibly skilled. We've had hours and hours and hours of internship, field placement experience, supervision. We've had to take licensing exams. If you have your LCSW, you've had to take another exam after 3,000 hours of supervision in New York State. And it's kind of we do a lot. And to have other professions not take us seriously is a little bit much, but it's also social workers or people who are considering social work that have that perception that social work is just being nice to someone or helping someone, that's perpetuating the lack of seriousness, the lack of professionalism that other professions give social work, right? So it's not just those other professionals and those people that are perpetuating the idea that social work is just helping someone. We really don't know what we're talking about. It's those people that believe that as well. Because, I go into social work school and, you do the icebreakers and everyone's like, I got into social work because I really just wanted to help someone. And it's kind of like, do you know what we do? Like, this is hardcore stuff. Like, I don't know. We do crazy, insane work. Like, when I was interning at a child advocacy center, we collaborated with the FBI on cases of human trafficking. Like, it was hardcore. And for people just to not take it seriously is insane to me. And so if you're thinking social work is just about helping people and you don't really got to pay attention in class because you know how to help people, do not do social work. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know psychology. You have to know how the human brain works. You have to understand attachment and trauma. You have to understand the systematic oppressions and historical oppression. You have to understand so many complex systems and how they intertwine together and how that impacts your ability to help someone so well that if you don't understand that, maybe you don't do social work. On that note, I think it's also really important to understand about social work is burnout is real. Burnout is real. And I did not think that when I was young, when I was so young. And this year it became more of a reality to me. Obviously, I'm still in grad school. I don't want anyone to think, oh my gosh, you haven't really even gotten into the field yet. You're already burned out. That's not really the case. It was my first semester of grad school, and there was a lot of contributing factors, right? I had just moved to New York City. I had just started grad school. I was honestly pretty isolated. I'm an introvert anyways. And I also have social anxiety. I have a tendency for depressive tendencies. And so when I moved and I definitely isolated myself, which in turn exacerbated symptoms of depression and social anxiety. So it became increasingly more difficult for me to, get out of my comfort zone, really create a home base and support system for me here, which ultimately led me to becoming burned out in terms of my academics and my field placement. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily that I was sick of social work because I still had the passion for social work. It was my own personal mental health that was impacting my ability to do the social work. So that's also something to keep in mind. Burnout is not just something that you experience just because, social work is hard. Social work is hard. And this is more of a topic for another podcast, maybe something that I'll talk about next week. But dealing with your own mental health as a social worker, because we see a lot of stuff and it's really intense. It's intense work that we do. It can be heartbreaking. It can be frustrating. It can just challenge every single part of who you are as a human. And if you do not take care of yourself, and especially if you already have mental health concerns, if you are already, seeing a therapist and, working on concerns for depression or anxiety or anything else, bipolar disorder, anything like that, it's especially important for you to take care of yourself and to do what you need to do. Actively be, seeing your therapist and taking medication if you need it and all this stuff. It's so important because that's something I wasn't doing. And in combination with just, adjusting to a completely new life, that really impacted my social work abilities, I just wasn't feeling that passion because in every other area of my life, I was burned out basically. And so it kind of just trickled down into how I was feeling and my ability to actually do social work when it came to my field placement. So that's nice. Just a reminder, like, if you think that you are, I don't know, just completely great and that you'll never get burned out, you need to understand that right now that you will, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't have boundaries, if you know that you have a predisposition to mental health concerns, I would probably start getting help now, right? Don't wait for things to be exacerbated or for, a mental health concern to actually be triggered. Seek help now, because social work is hard. And it is likely that if you have a mental health concern, you will likely be triggered in social work, because we deal in mental health, right? So just keep that in mind. If you feel like you're invincible, again, I'm not saying social work isn't for you, but I would definitely keep yourself in check and understand that you aren't, because social work is hard. We work with humans, we work with humans suffering, the most vulnerable people in our society. And it's hard and it's grueling, especially when so much of the system is stacked against you and you're working within broken, oppressive systems. You need to understand right now that it's hard work, and there are going to be times that you are not successful. There are going to be times when clients walk away, or when you're not able to, get the conviction you wanted, and just all of these things. And so you need to accept right now that doesn't mean you're not a good social worker. That doesn't mean that you didn't do your best. But you're not invincible, and those things will affect you because you're human, and that's okay, right? We're in social work. We preach going to therapy. We preach having a support system, coping skills, self-care. It would be great if the workplace actually implemented things that reflected what they were preaching at us, saying self-care and yoga. They could increase probably pay, not pay social workers minimum wage after receiving a master's degree. That could probably be beneficial for mental health, but that's besides the point. If you're considering social work, essentially what I want you to keep in mind is you are a human, right? And just being human, you are already predisposed to pain, to hurting when another person is hurting. If you don't have the capacity to be empathetic towards another person's experience, you should not do social work. If you don't have the ability to understand your own biases and how that affects your work, if you don't have the ability to see where you are privileged in life, and how you're able to leverage that privilege for the betterment of those vulnerable populations, perhaps you should not do social work. If you do not have the ability to just have compassion, just pure compassion for another human, perhaps you shouldn't do social work, If you don't have that passion, if you don't have that ferocity, if social work doesn't just make you go, wow, every single day, it's important to pursue something you're passionate about. Obviously, I need to take into consideration people who just need to work, right? We all need to make money. We all got to survive. And so that's also important to understand. But it's also we work with other humans. If we screw up, sometimes it could be bad. We're not just working with numbers. These are truly actual human beings that we work with. It's also important to understand, if you're considering social work, it's not just about helping people. We are highly skilled, educated, and trained professionals who have a super wide base of knowledge. This is not just about helping people. If you go into social work thinking you just want to help people, you will be disappointed. Because there will be times when clients will yell at you, when you will feel like you're not seeing any progress, when things all seem to be going wrong and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I helping? The purpose of social work is not to help people, because that implies that you know better and that you have the ability to pull people up, right? To lift them up from where they are. Social work is more about that empowerment approach. We're not doing any lifting. We are empowering others to lift themselves, right? We're providing those resources. We're getting those things together. We're using strengths-based approach. Perhaps you're a therapist, using those different modalities. Social work is not just about helping people, because the bottom line is you will be disappointed for the days that you don't, And social work is also so much more complex than just helping people. And it's just saying that does not do justice to our profession at all. To kind of sum up what this episode of the Thought Bubble podcast is, it's important to understand that social workers have so many different roles. We are in complex systems. We do a lot of different things. If you want to be in social work, you need to understand that you will be having to do a lot, You'll be having to do a lot of important work, honestly. What we do is important. Social workers have important jobs. And you need to accept now that you will not be getting the recognition and the praise that you might want. You are not going to be, those celebrities that are praised for donating to criminal justice reform or, visiting an orphanage in Africa. You might not have the media attention. You won't be getting wows from everyone. You're in social work. Sometimes you might even be like, oh, you're a social worker? Don't you take kids away from people? You know that? You need to understand now it's not about the praise. It's not about the reward. It's not about what you get. It's truly about just serving others. Being a servant to others. Just being human, understanding human need, and having the compassion and empathy to be there for another person whose experience has room for improvement. So if you don't believe you can engage someone in a meaningful way, in a non-judgmental way that is empowering and strengths-based and makes them feel like an actual person, you should not be in social work. If you have a tendency to bully, don't be in social work. There are 10 million other things I could say here. But the bottom line is social work is awesome. We do crazy, crazy, amazing work. And it is rewarding. It really is. And we do help people. But we also do so much more than that. And we are highly skilled, educated professionals that work within broken systems in an attempt to alleviate some sort of suffering and achieve some sort of progress, whatever that looks like. We do awesome work. Social workers are superheroes, And I truly want you, if you are considering social work, or maybe you're in the field and you're maybe thinking about switching it up, you're wondering if social work is still for you, it's okay to move on. It's also okay to not be a social worker. The work we do is fun and it's amazing, and I think you should have a passion for it. But it takes a special someone to be a social worker. Especially if you're going to be in this career for the long haul. And so I truly want you to have a time of self-reflection before you decide to commit to social work. Because you aren't just dealing with numbers, you aren't just dealing with, sales, anything. You're dealing with people and whatever's going on in their life and their experience. And the impact you have could be great or it can be devastating. And so I really before you make that decision, please reflect, dive deep into who you truly are and find that passion, whatever that looks like for you, whether or not it is social work. So thank you everyone for coming to listen to my podcast. I know it's been a minute. I'm sorry. Mental health is crazy. So thank you everyone. Please leave your thoughts below and see all my other social medias at The Thought Bub on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and if you are a social worker in the fields or in social services somehow, I hope you have a fantastic day. If you are considering social work, it's an amazing profession, and I truly hope you think it through and that you come into this field with passion and excitement and a willingness to serve others. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next time.